Hello, Gospel Life Church. Welcome to your weekly devotional. And I just wanted to say how encouraged I've been recently, just by our body. The past few weeks, we've had a lot of people reach out to us as leaders of the church and just say they're praying for us, they appreciate our ministry. That means a lot. Ministering and leading a church in a pandemic, as Dave has mentioned, there's no rule book for this. Nobody told us how this is going to go, and so it's not simple, but we are honored to be leading such a great body. So thank you for your encouragement to us. And I know we're going to talk about a subject that's very prevalent in many people's minds: the idea of giving up our rights and our freedoms. And it's a touchy subject, right? We feel like our rights and our freedoms are being taken advantage of. They're being taken away. We're losing some of these things that we just celebrated Independence Day, which was a celebration of our rights and freedoms we have as a country. And we feel that some of these rights and freedoms we're losing, and that is fearful. I'll be honest with you. None of us desire that. And there is a time and place for us to stand and fight for those freedoms that rightfully are ours. I think it's great when believers get involved in politics and help make the policies that govern our country. That's important. It's important for us. But as believers, when it comes to our personal rights and freedoms, the Bible has a little different take on where we should be standing. Dave mentioned in his sermon on Sunday, and if you have not listened to that sermon, please go and listen to it. It's really a opportunity for us as a body to grow in ways that I think are going to be more visible and powerful than many other sermons that he's preached, and I think he would agree with that. So encourage you to listen to the sermon. But he mentioned the imitation of Christ. He just defended his dissertation on that topic, and we all know what Christ gave up. And no matter what rights we are asked to give up, it's nothing compared to what Christ and the rights that he gave up for the sake of the gospel. And there's a reason we changed our name to Gospel Life Church. It's because we want the gospel to be our highest priority, the good news of Jesus Christ. And so when we think about that, think about Paul, and he said to imitate him as he is imitating Christ. And so I thought, well, let's look what Paul said about giving up rights. So we're going to look at 1 Corinthians 9 this morning. And in chapter 8, his famous argument about giving up meat for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of his brothers. And he gave up, even though he felt he had a right to eat meat, he saw nothing wrong with that. He gave up that right for the sake of the gospel. There's a lot of rights that I'd rather give up than my right to eat meat, to be honest. So I'm glad at this point I have no reason, as far as I know, to have to give up that right. But as we get into chapter 9, he starts going through all these other rights that he has. As an apostle, as a free person, he feels he has the rights to a variety of things. And he says, I'm willing to give up these rights for the sake of the gospel. Go ahead and read chapter 9 in its entirety. I don't have time to do that this morning. We're going to focus on verses 19 through 23, though. Let me read that together. 1 Corinthians 9:19. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, and I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessing. Paul was willing to give up every right if it meant that the gospel might go forth and he might win just one more life for Christ. And I think that puts things in perspective for us, for me at least, for sure. I know the mask issue is a big one in many people's minds, and I am with many of you questioning the logistics of why we should wear a mask and if it is effective. And you can read studies on both sides saying, yes, it is. You need to wear it. It really does nothing. Forget wearing it. It's dumb. So there's, I'm with you in my skepticism. But if somebody looks at me and sees that I'm not wearing a mask, and that puts up a wall that I cannot share the gospel with them because they think I'm uncaring for them and for our country and for people, I'm going to put on a mask so that the mask is not the stumbling block that keeps the gospel from going forth. The stumbling block should be the cross. And that's the only stumbling block that we should have. Every other stumbling block, whether we feel it's our right or not, should not be worth holding on to for the sake of the gospel. So, some things to think about. And I think very applicable things to think about as we talk through and think through our rights and what Paul says here in 1 Corinthians 9. So thank you for your time this morning. Praying for each of you in our body. And again, I just want to say I'm encouraged by the love and unity that I felt within our body, and looking forward to God continuing to do great things in the midst of this pandemic. Thank you and have a great day.